What's up? I hope everyone's having a pleasant, wonderful day. Today I want to talk about something at this time that was really novel and groundbreaking. I'm going to be talking about the West Coast Avengers. Alright, the West Coast Avengers first publication was in 1984. It first started off as a 4-issue miniseries. In the 1980s, miniseries were huge. And I mean huge in this way that they were novel. At that time, you either had an ongoing series or you didn't. There was no yearly miniseries like Civil War, Secret Wars, Crisis on Infinite Earth. Even when those came out, the first editions, they were a big deal. So in the 1980s, when you had a miniseries that came out, it was something, a big deal, because they was rare. They didn't come out all the time. Wolverine had a miniseries, and a few other people that I know had a miniseries, but I definitely know Wolverine, and I did collect this miniseries, 1 to 4, but I was young at the time. I had them all, I had my comic books scattered all out, so now I went to look for them with my friends in my house, so you know what happened then. My Wolverine #1 disappeared. Hey, so that's what it's like being a young person, having your friends and your comic books scattered all over the place, and you looking at each of the comic books. So, but I live and learn. But like I said, 1984 is when the West Coast Avengers came out. At that time, it was only, every comic book only had basically almost one ongoing series. Now, Batman and Superman, they still had, they had like 3 or 4 issue series like Action Comics, Superman, Batman, Bold and the Brave. So Batman and Superman, they still had about 3 issues that they were in, but every other comic book character, and Spider-Man, he probably, at that time, he had Amazing Spider-Man, Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, etc. The main characters, they had their spin-off series, but everyone else, like the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, the Justice League, they only had one series in the 1980s. Now they had multiple editions scattered all over the place. Avengers, New Avengers, Avengers this, Avengers that, X-Men Gold, X-Men Blue, X-Men Pink for all I know. But in 1994, if you do your research, most comic books only had one major edition, and all their characters was in that edition. So, like I said, miniseries, there was not many miniseries at the time. So, West Coast Avengers, it became so popular that originally, like I said, it started off as a miniseries, but it became an ongoing series. And when I did my research, it said that ongoing series lasted for about 9 years. So that's from 1984 to, I believe, 1993. And that's a big deal on comic books, when you can last at least 10 years, because as you know, a lot of comic books can barely last 2 years before they pull. So West Coast Avenger, it was a lengthy comic book title. And when I did my research, I heard there's going to be another remake of the West Coast Avengers in 2018. So some year at this time, it may be already out. Already. So, most of the characters who were in that original West Coast Avengers from the time period I listed, they were B-list characters. So you ain't had no Thor in there. There was no Hercules, no Hawk, no Ant-Man, none of that. It was those B-list superhero characters whose names I will not tell you, so you can go read about it yourself. It gave Hawkeye his first chance to shine in the spotlight. For many decades, many years, Hawkeye, he was a long-standing member of the Avengers, but he always took the sideline. He was always behind Thor, Captain America, Iron Man, etc. Hawkeye in the Avengers book, he was basically almost like a sidekick. But in that West Coast Avengers, he was the team leader. We got to see his strategic level of thinking. We got to see him call the shots. We got to see Hawkeye be the man. He was the big cheese. He gave the orders, and everyone accepted Hawkeye orders. Even though he didn't have no superpowers, he was a respected personality. I guess if I didn't have no superpowers, I would still respect Hawkeye too. Because if a man can shoot an arrow and always, he can shoot an arrow 90 minutes away, he can always hit his target, that is a skill to be respected. That's a skill to be respected. So he got to be the leader. No one dared question his leadership. And he was the link between the East Coast Avengers in New York and the West Coast Avengers, because those two teams, they still kept in contact with each other, and they did have their little crossover issues with each other. It was like a family, really. East Coast, West Coast. There was no clash between them, like in rap, gangster rap. It's a clash between East Coast and West Coast. No, the East Coast Avengers and the West Coast Avengers, they were still family oriented. Something else that I like, especially with Marvel. All the Marvel superheroes seem to be centered in New York City. Spider-Man in New York City. The Avengers in New York City. The Fantastic Four in New York City. The only character who I know who's diversified in his location of Marvel is the Hawk. Since the Hawk can jump for miles on end, he can be in Baltimore one week, DC a few days later, Wyoming another week, North Carolina, South Carolina. Hawk was the only character who I know in Marvel Comics who you did not know location where he was. Everyone else basically in Marvel Comics was centered in New York City. Definitely in the 1980s, most of them was in New York City. I do think that She-Hulk, she's the only exception. I think that She-Hulk, as Jennifer Walter, was located in Los Angeles. I believe she was a lawyer in Los Angeles. But all the other A-list characters, Iron Man, Stark Industries was in New York City. Peter Parker, his job and his college was in New York City. The Avengers, New York City. Fantastic Four, New York City. So you get my point. One thing I do love about DC Comics, their characters they can be anywhere. For instance, Batman, even though it's fictional places, but they was in different cities. Batman, always in Gotham City. Superman, dealing with Metropolis. The Flash, Central City. So DC was very diversified that they put their heroes in different spots on their Earth, which was called Earth 1. Different locations. Marvel, centralized in New York City. I guess that made sense because that's where Marvel Comics was published at. New York City. So we publish in New York City, so we reside in New York. So the Scarlet Witch and the Vision character arc took dramatic turns, a dramatic change. I'm not going to tell you what's happened because I want you to go and read about what happened to the Vision and Scarlet Witch. So the West Coast Avengers played a pivotal role in what happened with the Scarlet Witch and the Vision for decades to come. Now, another thing I like about it too, I said it had those B-list characters. It also listed B-list villains. It gave those villains the time to have their day in the sun. they got to shine and show that their powers was really noteworthy. Even though Marvel made them B-list characters, their powers was really on par with Loki, the Hawk, Sandman, etc. Some of those B-list villains that the Avengers faced was Hydro Man. Read up about him. Graviton. Please read about Graviton, because he has cosmic level powers. So B-list characters got to shine, not just the B-list heroes. And like I said, one thing I did like about the West Coast Avengers compared to the East Coast Avengers, the East Coast Avengers felt like it was more a business, a corporation. It didn't have no family ties. When you start reading about the West Coast Avengers from 1984 to 1993, you're going to see, especially in the early editions that I had, the miniseries, and I think I read up until issues 150 something, they was more family oriented. They had each other back. So, alright, so tell me what y'all think. Go read up on the West Coast Avengers. Before you leave, give me a thumbs up if you like the content. If you would like to hear some other comic book issues that I enjoyed, please subscribe to the channel. You all have a wonderful, safe, and happy day.